I have been working through Ecclesiastes, but it's been a while since I have really looked at the book and put it out uh, on YouTube. And I have worked my way up through to chapter 6. Just going back for a moment, we have seen in chapter 1, 1 to 11, the introduction to the book of Ecclesiastes. The theme, how everything continues to be the same and nothing remains. That which has been is that which will be, that which will be done is that which has been done, and so forth. Then he talks about vanity. Everything is fleeting. Vanity of vanities. Havel havalim. Amar kohelet. Havel havalim. Hako havo. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. All is fleeting. Then he talks then about the vanity of human wisdom. One can become very wise, but it only tells a person where the problems are, but it doesn't give him the solution to the problem. So he said, even that has proven vain for me. Then of materialism in chapter 2. He tries again material things and says, even this is vanity and chasing after the wind. Material things just won't satisfy, he says. But he does say that wisdom is better than folly. In other words, if you're going to contrast the two, better to have wisdom than simply folly, because at least a wise man can see with his eyes, even though he can't solve the problems and riddles of life. Then there is the vanity of leaving one's inheritance to another. In other words, we don't know, he says, what will happen even after death. We work hard and get some things, but then we leave it to someone that will just destroy it. And so that also, the Kohelet says, proves to be vanity. So then we talked about how he keeps this theme going, enjoy life. In light of this, enjoy life. And life is to be enjoyed. So often we lose sight of that teaching. He keeps repeating it. And then there's a time for everything under the sun. And he talks about chapter 3, how that everything has its proper time. And there's not much we can do other than enjoy the moment, he is saying. And furthermore, he sees that there's unrighteousness often in the place of judgment. Where there should be righteous judgment, there is often unrighteousness. So this is vanity. He's talking again as an observer of life. And then in chapter 4, we talked about the oppressions that he sees done under the sun. He sees many people being oppressed, and he talks about the vanity of that and how in the midst of all that, he then addresses work and rest. He says we need to work, but we need to have one hand full of rest as well. If we have both hands full of toil, then it's not a balanced life. And so he talks about that balance in chapter 4. In chapter 4, he also talks about the vanity of a lonely miser and how the person keeps things for himself, but is lonely, doesn't share it, and that proves to be vain. But then he talks about the value of friendship, how that friendship is a beautiful thing. Two, if one fall down, the other will help lift him up. And the threefold cord is not easily broken. So he talks about friendship. Then he talks about the vanity of popularity. You may be popular, but it won't last long. And so he talks about that in relationship to a king that is replaced by another, and on and on. But it could be applied generally. Popularity is fleeting. And then he talks about the vanity of rash vows. You can make a vow and not carry it out and face judgment from the Lord, the vanity of that. And then in 5, also the oppression of the poor through greediness. Greediness often causes other people to be oppressed. And then he concludes this is all in chapter 5, I should say. He talks about the vanity of the love of money. The one who loves money will not be satisfied if that's one's goal in life, because the more that one increases, the more eaters come along and eat up what one has. So the vanity of the love of money, he warns against that. Then in chapter 6, this is where we stopped last time, in chapter 6 of Ecclesiastes, the Kohelet, he's now going to talk again about the vanity of the wealthy miser. And so there is an evil, he says, which I have seen under the sun, and is common among men. A man to whom God has given riches, wealth, and honor, so that he wants nothing for his soul of all that he desires, yet God gives him not power to eat of it, but a stranger eats it. This is vanity and an evil disease. If a man begat 100 children and live many years, so that the days of his years be many, and his soul be not filled with good, then this also, and that he has then no burial. That is to say, an untimely birth then is better than that. In other words, even if one could live forever in that state, an untimely birth is better. But death does come. He says, even the wealthy miser, for he comes in this life with vanity, and he departs in darkness, and his name shall be covered with darkness. Moreover, he has not seen the sun, nor anything. This has more rest than the other. In other words, even though he live 1,000 years, twice told, yet he has seen no good. What is it? The Kohelet says, do not all go to one place, meaning all have to leave this world. All the labor of a man then is for his mouth, and yet the appetite is not filled. For what has the wise man more than the fool, Kohelet says? What has the poor that knows to walk before the living? Better then is the sight of the eyes than the wondering of desire. In other words, it's better to see and be able to experience what one sees than the wondering of desire for more. This is also vanity and a vexation of spirit. That which has been is named already. It is known that it is man, neither may he contend with him that is mightier than he. Speaking, no doubt, about living on and never experiencing death. Seeing there are many things then that increase vanity, what is man the better? For who knows what is good for man in this life? All his vain life, which he spends, are like a shadow. And who can tell what shall be after him under the sun? In other words, life goes quickly. It's like a shadow. And so as we look at this chapter then, notice we go into this chapter to talk about the wealth of a miser. Wealth without the ability to use or enjoy it because of one's miserliness. Notice in verses 1 to 9 then that we read, the Kohelet says, there is an evil that I have seen under the sun, and it is a heavy evil upon men. A man to whom God has given riches and wealth and honor, so that he does not lack anything for his soul of all that he should desire. And yet, God does not give him the power to eat from it, to enjoy it. Indeed, this is vanity and also an evil disease, he says. I think the thought here is that the Kohelet is saying that the Lord may allow a person to have riches, wealth, and honor, not because of this person's miserliness. God does not allow him to then, because of it, enjoy the gift of riches he has. He has no power then to enjoy it because of his miserliness, and leaves it to a stranger who will then enjoy it. For the man who has money but is miserly and unable to enjoy it, even if he beget 100 children and live many years, so that the days of his life are many, but his soul does not have enough good and does not even have a burial. Let's assume then one can have a long life, the Kohelet is saying, and not even, as we had alluded to before, not even have a burial, live on forever, so to speak, which he uses, of course, in an exaggerative way. An untimely birth is better than this person. In other words, the person who has wealth but is stingy with it and cannot enjoy it, even if he lives for many, many years, it would be better to have a stillbirth than to have this. For in the untimely birth, this person comes in vanity and departs in darkness, and his name is covered in darkness. Even though he does not actually live at all, indeed, though even that happens, he is better than this rich person that cannot enjoy what he has, because he has not seen the sun nor known it, and has more gift than the other. He still hasn't enjoyed life. He has more gratification than the first person, because he has not seen all the evil and darkness under the sun. I think he's contrasting again the person who dies stillborn. He has not experienced that sort of vexation, even though he should live 1,000 years twice told, even if he should live 2,000 years and not be able to enjoy what he has. It is futile, because do not all go to one place? In other words, everyone eventually dies, the Kohelet is saying, and leaves this world, and the end will be the same. Whether one is stillborn or dies young, or whether one lives for many years, they all go back to dust. At the end of life, then, one goes to the grave, whoever they may be, the Kohelet is saying. So if in life one is not able to enjoy life and what God has allowed one to have, he is saying this is simply a tragedy. That is why the Lord keeps emphasizing the need to use what we have. Our talents and gifts he has given us for his glory and for his kingdom. He goes on to say then, all the labor of man is for his mouth, and yet his appetite is not filled. Here we have a proverb. If a man lives many days, and unlike the stillborn that dies, the man labors to try to fill his appetite. Yet with his self-indulgence, his soul is not satisfied. What a tragedy. For what advantage then has the wise man over the fool? He now is coming back to the reality of the end of life. Both have to face death, and neither is able to gratify one's longings. The wise man dies without wisdom. Uh, the fool dies. But both die, and ultimately, what advantage has the wise man over the fool? Or the poor man that has understanding in walking before the living? I think here the Kohelet goes back to deal with the reality of death that faces both the wise man and the unwise, as well as the rich that can enjoy and the one who might die young in life. The reality then is again the shadow of death hovers over everyone. There is good news, though, I believe, for the Christian. And that is, even though this is true, what we do for Christ will have lasting value because, thank the Lord, he has conquered death. And we are told, for example, in 1 Corinthians, it reads, as Paul writes, O death, where is your sting? O grave, where is your victory? Looking at Jesus Christ, who is the victor over death, if our life is hidden with Christ, and we are raised with Christ and seated with him in the heavenlies, as Ephesians 2 tells us, then we have good news. In spite of the reality of the finitude of life, in Jesus we find meaning. He becomes the answer to some of the Kohelet's quest here. The Kohelet comes back again to the wondering of the eyes in this chapter, speaking of the person that is never satisfied with what he has. Better is the seeing of the eyes than the wondering of the soul for something more. He says the soul wondering after the desire that what he has is insufficient. It is like a bird in the hand is better than several in the bush, so to speak. We must be satisfied with what we have. And to constantly be unsatisfied is vanity and a striving after the wind. In the New Testament, for example, we are taught that we are to be content with food and clothing. Jesus even says not to worry about tomorrow, for what you will eat or drink. Take no thought for tomorrow, but live for the kingdom of the Lord right now. Again, the wondering of desire is the theme here that proves to be vanity. People often seek one thing after another and are never truly satisfied, Kohelet is saying. He concludes in verses 10 and 12 then that the vanity of man's struggle against fate. Whatever comes into being, its name was given long ago, and it is known in advance that what man is, neither can he contend with him that is mightier than him. I believe the Kohelet is saying that for man, his name is mere man. He is mortal. It is foreknown that man is that. From dust man is, and to dust he will return. I think that the play that the Kohelet is making on the word man here, but furthermore, it is foreknown not only what man is, but man, because he is finite, cannot contend with God, who is mightier than him. One is not able to determine the future, and one cannot ultimately, in his own strength, defeat the reality of death. The good news, again, though, is that Jesus, and I see Christ providing an antidote to everything that the Kohelet is addressing here. that Jesus has provided the answer when he said, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never, ever die. This is in John 11:25. We do not know the future. We cannot become infinite in this life, and we cannot control the future. There is a song that used to be sung, Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. The future is not ours to see. Instead of singing, Que sera, sera, our goal should be, as believers in Jesus, that while we do not know the future, we live by faith and press on, knowing that Jesus knows the future and will guide us. We also know we have victory over our finitude by connecting ourselves with Him, who is the resurrection and the life, and who also brings meaning to our lives. He goes on to say, seeing that there are many words that increase vanity, what is man the better? We could go on talking and trying to give words, the Kohelet is saying, but all that will do is increase, all that it will accomplish is to increase vanity. Some understand the Hebrew word here, words, to mean things. If that is the case, then even though we increase things, what is man the better in light of not being able to control the future and in the inevitability of death? That is true also if we understand it as increasing many words about this subject. We still cannot change those realities. In verse 12 he says, for who knows what is good for man all the days of his vain life, which he spends as a shadow. Who can tell to a man what shall be after him under the sun? Tachat Hashamish is a theme all the way through the Kohelet. I think he concludes this section by saying, who knows the future, and who can tell any given individual what is good for his life because he knows the future? Only the Lord knows that, and that is why we must cast ourselves upon him. He says, all the days of this fleeting life which he spends are like a shadow, or as a shadow. Again, it refers us back to the brevity of life. How true this is, how quickly life goes. So in light of that, how do we tell a person what shall be after him under the sun? We do not know what will happen tomorrow, the Kohelet is saying. Again, though, the good news from the standpoint of the New Testament is that we can find joy and fulfillment in loving the Lord our God with all of our heart, soul, and mind, and in serving the triune God. This brings us meaning. We cannot predict the future. No one can. We can only live a day at a time in obedience to the one who knows the future. In the meantime, what the Kohelet is saying is enjoy life and do not chase after the rabbit trails of materialism and the love of money, which he has already shown to be fruitless. Instead, share life with others and enjoy life in our toil. I'm reminded of the great hymn, Work, for the night is coming, when man's work is done. That should be the goal of every believer in Jesus Christ, to work for him in light of the brevity of life, knowing that he brings meaning to all our lives, and ultimately, as we serve him, we find that we will be rewarded. Paul describes it so beautifully in 2 Timothy 4. when he says, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the course. I have kept the faith. Henceforth, there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give me in that day, and not to me only, but to all them who have loved his appearing. May that be our life. May that be what we do, that we do the work of the ministry, that we share the word of the Lord, that we pursue the path the Lord has called each of us to do, in that we then love his return, and we can know that not only will Paul be rewarded, but all of those, including us, as we love our Lord and look forward to his coming and glorify and serve him in this life. I remember as a boy, my father used to give us little chores to do while he went to work. And I remember I would always go out. He would come home about 4 o'clock, and I would always go out and wait on the sidewalk to watch the bus about 2 blocks away come and to drop my father and others off. And I would run to meet him. And I look forward, as I think about what's going on here, that we have been given tasks to do. Let us be faithful. Jesus has gone to the Heavenly Father in heaven. And someday he's coming back. And Paul says, let us press on and do what he has asked each of us to do. That's where meaning comes in life, knowing that they who love his appearing, Paul says, will be rewarded by the returning Christ.